As many of you will know, Lightroom's been updated, and it's a big one this time. And this is my top 5 list of improvements. Number 1 on the list are performance improvements to the user interface. I'm going to show you a couple of them now. What they've done is they've made the sliders much smoother than they were before. Do you remember they used to be quite glitchy? Things would get stuck and your picture wouldn't change. Well, have a look at this. I'm going to move to the exposure slider, grab this, and move it up and down. What do you notice? Anything different? It's going black and white. But look at the strip down the bottom, no change. Look at the navigation at the top there, no change. What happens when I let go? It changes. How's that? This slider is now nice and smooth, and we only see the changes applied to the film strip and the navigation at the end of it. It's really speeded things up. I've got to give it to them. Nice touch, Adobe. Number 2 on the list is something really big. It's the hue slider adjustment that's been added to the local area adjustments brushes. So this is the brush, the radial filter, and the gradient filter. And I want to show you what happens when we use that. Have a look at this owl picture. Let's pretend that we shot this against a sky background instead of a green grassy bank as it was actually shot. So I'm going to grab my brush tool here and I click it and I show the mask overlay, and I'm just going to start painting on this background, this greeny background here. Just make sure it's nicely painted over. And I'm going to be too careful about the selection either, because I've got ways of working with that. So I've got an area selected there, and I come down to the range mask. This is another great feature, but it wasn't in this update. And I click on color. I'm going to get this little color range selector tool. I'm going to click it, and what I'm going to press is the shift key because I want to make multiple selections. I want to grab a little color selection around here, maybe one in this vignette at the back here, maybe one in this brighter area, and maybe one more closer to the bird. Let's see what that color selection has given us. Look what a nice job it's done. And I can smooth it out using this slider down the bottom here, just to reduce or increase it. So I want to, let's take it to about there, shall we? I turn off the mask overlay, and I'm going to come up to this exciting new tool, this hue slider in the middle of the screen. I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to set the target color to be blue for sky, or cyan maybe. I'm going to go up to the right. What have I got? I've got the background changing to a nice deep shade of blue. Now if I brighten that up, what do we get? A pretty remarkably different picture, I would say. We've got blue for a background instead of a grassy bank. Nice! What a nice feature. We've never had that in the basic, in the adjustment brushes section before. Number 3 on the list, this is a big one. ISO adaptive presets. What the hell are those? Well, what we can do now is we can take a picture shot at ISO 100 and another one shot at ISO 6400, probably on the same camera. And what we can do is we can set a noise reduction and sharpening setting for both of those pictures. Well, we could do that before, right? Nothing's really changed. Well, what's changed now is when we select both of these pictures with those adjustments baked in, we can create a new preset. And actually what it does is it then interpolates between the ISO 100 and the ISO 64 to choose a setting for those detail adjustments in a third or any kind of other picture that you've got shot at a different ISO. How cool is that? So let's see what that does now. Okay, so I've got this star image here. This is what it looks like before adjustments, and I've got this elephant image here. And the only thing that these images have in common is that the elephant was shot at ISO 100 and this star picture was shot at ISO 6400. So I'm going to make some noise reduction and sharpening adjustments to this picture. I'm going to put the noise right up there. And I'll put some color noise adjustments in as well. So I've got the luminance noise reduction on 50, color on 50, and no sharpening applied to this image. Let's come to the elephant. I'm going to ramp up the sharpening on this guy. I'm going to ramp up the masking on this guy, and there's going to be no luminance adjustment at all. Now, I'm going to select both of those, and I'm going to create a new preset. So if I come up to the preset setting in the develop module up here, create preset, look at what's down at the bottom. There's something called ISO settings. I'm going to click on that and click create. Okay, so I've got a preset. It's appeared in my user presets area here. I'm going to go to a third picture. And it's this African skimmer, this juvenile African skimmer. Currently there's nothing done except there's some default sharpening applied. Let's apply this preset to it. What's going to happen? Well, look at the detail area here. It's changed the luminance adjustment, it's changed the color noise adjustment, and it's also affected the sharpening in the mask. But it's not the same values as we set originally. It's somewhere in the middle, and it's adapted based on that ISO of 1000 in this case. Pretty clever, hey? But there are some drawbacks to this method because noise in photographs is not always as a result of ISO. If you shoot effectively, you adapt your photographic style, maybe you shoot to the right of the histogram, you bring up those shadows, you're going to suffer much less from noise artifacts. And then if you shoot with a big bright lens, perhaps on a cropped body, it's going to perform completely differently to a narrow dark lens on the same body. And you'll see that typically with older cameras like my Canon 7D Mark II, it performs so much better with an f2.8 lens attached to it because it's getting so much more light into it. It's not all about ISO when it comes to noise, not by a long stretch. Anyway, this is a very welcome change, and if you shoot lots of pictures, thousands of pictures like I do of wildlife, or you shoot weddings, and a lot of it's in changeable light because you're inside and you're outside, you're going to like this thing a lot. Number 4 on this list, we've got default presets, which include noise reduction and lens corrections. This is cool. This is actually really cool. If you come up to the presets section up at the top here, you'll see there's 2 new defaults. We've got something called Adobe Default, Camera Settings, and then all of these Adobe Colors, Landscapes, Portrait, Vivid, plus Lens, plus Noise Reduction. They baked in the color profile, the lens profile adjustment, and the noise reduction, and given you a selection up here. That's pretty cool. And the other thing they've got is camera settings. We never used to have that. Camera settings means that if you've got a camera with its own settings that you took on the day of the photograph and you want to retain them, it's not going to overwrite those with this Adobe default preset when you bring the image in. It's going to retain the ones you took with the camera settings. And you can actually go further. You can go in and set under preferences, you can go and set those import presets using this here. And then under optics, we've got a similar story, but without the color profiles attached. This time we've got chromatic aberration correction, lens corrections, and then lens plus chromatic aberration correction. And that means we don't have to go down to the lens correction setting here and create our own presets. Sorry, I'm talking fast because I'm so excited about this update. It's fantastic. Number 5 on my list of 5, just to keep it brief, is the new UI. And it's not shown anywhere, user interface. UI means user interface. And it's not shown anywhere as clearly as under the tone curve. The tone curve has changed utterly, and it's such an important tool. And it's a really good tool to use. Now, a lot of people skip it, but the tone curve has had a facelift, and now we can select our parametric curves using a button here. We can select point curves using this button. We can even go and select our color channels, but look what's happened to them. Something exciting. They've got color hinting. And that really confuses new photographers because in the old days, it was just a flat screen and you didn't really know, okay, I'm in the red channel. What happens if I move it radically up and down? I wouldn't know. But look what it does now. With the color hinting, you can see it's turned the cyan. And with the, if I up the reds, you can see it's turned red. That color hinting is bound to help some people. And what's down here? This is really quite interesting. We can now adjust our tone curve using entries on the keyboard. That's good, because if you've got a spasmodic mouse like this one, it can go all over the place and end up pretty messy. But we're not done with this user interface update, because what you can do is actually make adjustments with the tone curve panel here, right-click it, you can copy the channel settings, go into a different channel, and paste the channel settings. Copy and paste. You don't have to recreate that tone curve anymore. It copies and pastes. How cool is that? But we're not done. with the UI. We come down to the HSL slider and we have a look at this saying color here. It's got these new radial buttons on the top and we can click on any of those and we don't have to waste that real estate. The human HSL slider used to be enormous. If I open it all up, you can see how big it is. Look at all those colors, hue, saturation, luminance, all of them there. I can just collapse all of that and I've got hue, saturation and luminance, and I can just choose the color that I want to affect or the hue I want to affect by clicking these radial options. So that's it. That's my top 5 tips or updates for Lightroom 9.3. I hope you enjoy it.
Your soul